Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
His name is Dan Sullivan. Do you like mashed potatoes? How about Congress? How about the courts? How about Donald? And how about James Edwards? Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. I'm Sam Bushman with hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, and it all starts now. James Edwards with me on the radio side of things. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Great to be back with you, Sam. As always, how are you? It is June now. We are a month closer to the midterms, and I know that's something on your mind today.
We're about to come up to White History Month in July, ladies and gentlemen, according to our dear friend Jesse Lee Peterson. So we'll start out with that. It is Juneteenth going on coming up now. What do you think of Juneteenth there, James?
I forgot about that. Juneteenth, yeah, that's right. Well, it's June is my birth month, so I have a lot of affection for the month of June, and born on June 22nd, and it's been...
And then May, your anniversary, so it just kicks off anniversary, birthday, and the birth of the nation. It's just a great time, isn't it?
Well, I mean, besides the heat and humidity here in the South, yes, it is. There's a lot of action.
You could always jettison that and move to the Rocky Mountains, though, my friend.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure. If I could afford, if I or any other American could afford real estate anymore, but the June has taken a downward turn in recent years. With, of course, so-called Pride Month now being instituted, although that seems to be a little bit on life support these days. Some major corporations are still trying to pound it out, but culturally it seems as though the vibe has shifted and most Americans have moved on from that. But then you have the ridiculous Juneteenth. I forgot about that, Sam. Yes, that is coming up as well.
Very, very strange, which is just insane. What is Donald going to celebrate it? Or is he going to make some snark comments about it? Is he going to overturn it and fire off an executive order the day before and cancel the day? It's kind of like you don't have floor 13 in a building. You could just have no 13, no Juneteenth day, and then nobody would do anything. It wouldn't go to work. It would just be an absent day, a non-existent day, James.
Well, I can tell you the government bureaucrats are not going to be working that day, and you better not go to the bank or the post office unless you want to find a locked door. That really is just ludicrous, but this is...
There you have it. It is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. Did you see this, James? In Alaska, there's a Senate race, and there's this guy named Dan Sullivan. Alaska voters can see two Republican candidates named Dan Sullivan on the same Senate primary ballot. People are rioting. There's threats of legal action. Republicans are up in arms. Some people say it's a conspiracy theory, that it's done intentionally to go ahead and, dilute the votes. And I mean, it's just a fiasco in Alaska, buddy.
I have not seen that, Sam. Of course, we were all focused on this election in Kentucky a few days ago with Thomas Massey. And then I did know that there were another round of elections last night. By the way, I'll just mention very quickly, our friend Steve King, his preferred candidate, won in that primary and beat the man that the establishment had used to primary Steve, Randy Feenstra. So Feenstra is out now. And so that was some good news. That was some election news that I gathered from last night. But no, now this is truly bizarre.
I got to change your name to Dan Sullivan, James.
There's a movie, Sam, that comes to mind. There's a movie that comes to mind. It's an early 90s comedy. It's very good. Eddie Murphy stars in it, and it's called The Distinguished Gentleman. And he's basically this low-level con. But have you ever seen it? It's a good movie.
I know about this,
He changes his name to the name of a deceased incumbent, and
then he becomes just a rock star.
Or maybe he doesn't change his name, and his name is just so happens to be the same name as the as the deceased congressman. But nevertheless, he has the same name, so he gets on the ballot and he wins. But so it kind of reminds me of this. But two people of the exact same name. I mean, I guess their middle names are going to have to be listed on the ballot when they go vote. But who's going to know which one is which?
Yeah, they have different middle initials, but it's going to cause confusion for sure, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, I just thought that was very, very strange, very
Never heard
interesting.
of anything like that.
Is it a conspiracy theory? Some are saying they just found a guy named Dan Sullivan to do it so that they could create, mischief and confusion and everything else. The other guy's just like, no, I just happen to have the same name. I don't know what to say or do about it. It's just the way it is. And, the truth, I don't know that we'll ever get to, but I do find Dan Sullivan versus Dan Sullivan kind of funny. And what's interesting is the Republicans are all rioting depending on which side you're on. Like, who does Donald endorse?
Probably Dan Sullivan.
I endorse Dan Sullivan, yeah.
I have never. This is an oddity story to begin. This is like a Ripley's Believe It or Not story here.
Yeah.
To kick off Wednesday on Liberty Roundtable. Never in my career have I heard of a story like this.
But they say truth is stranger than fiction, James.
I'm gonna have to look into that.
All right. Now I know that James Edwards does not like vegetables. Do you consider potatoes vegetables, James?
Well, see, here's the thing about it, Sam, is that's another question that, tomato they say is a fruit. I consider
that's
if it
correct.
Goes, from the ground like that in a garden, it's a vegetable. If it's like on a tree hanging, that's a fruit. But potato, it's mainly green vegetables. Like potatoes are fine.
So this is a starch. They're fine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's
anyway, the reason I'm asking you the question is this: I don't know if you know, but a woman files a $1.5 million lawsuit against Outback Steakhouse. Why? Because she slipped on mashed potatoes and fell down, buddy. And now everybody's getting in on the action. So there's some photos on the screen here coming up that basically you got this other guy that's sued too now. So everybody wants to sue Outback Steakhouse, James.
All right, see, now this actually probably carries a little more weight to it than the woman who didn't know coffee was going to be hot and sued McDonald's for $1 billion or how many millions it was.
I don't know. I've decided I'm going to sue, James. You know why I'm going to sue?
It is a litigious nation. But
you want to know why I'm going to sue, don't you? Because I didn't get any mashed potatoes.
Well, I think being practical, just trying to look at this from what I would do.
James wants to be serious now, ladies and gentlemen. Listen up.
So they probably should keep a clean floor. That may be on them. But if I slip on a potato, I say, listen, somebody dropped a potato, I slipped on it. I'm not going to get crazy here, but, how about a little comped meal? A comped meal would probably be an appropriate.
I would agree. And even if you came back and said, hey, listen, you know what? I've got some serious medical bills. I can't afford them. I'm not trying to cause anybody any problems. Is there a way I could be helped a little bit? It seems like some appropriate negotiating could just happen, and this could be like a non-issue, James.
Well, see, now that's the thing too. If I didn't even think about, if this, I assumed this person wasn't injured. Now, if there were some,
no, this person really was injured, from what I understand. Now, it's an alleged injury because you never know how bad. That's the problem. See, do you really have an injury where it's like, hey, you know what, I need a couple of $1,000 to go to a chiropractor, or, I need a little bit of money maybe for a surgery, or, I get, a little bit of money or a little bit of support if it's genuine. When you sue for $1.5 million, though, to me, are you really serious, or are you just out to try to get rich on a normal mishap of life, right?
I'll even go even further than this, Sam.
Sure.
I think if it can be determined that a person like this is just trying to get a lottery ticket, and
then somebody else ought to sue her.
Absolutely. I think that these people should be punished with either some sort of jail time even, or at the very least, be sanctioned to pay attorney's fees and, be countersued. Because, you're looking for a golden ticket. Now, if you're truly injured, and you're injured so severely that it's impacting your ability to work long term, and I'm talking about long term for years and years. If you're talking about $1.5 million, that's a retirement. That's better than retirement. That is a lottery,
and that's what makes me question the legitimacy of the claims, right?
Even though doctors and hospitals are, grossly inflate their prices, even if this person didn't have insurance and they're, self-paying all this. You'd have to have some major surgeries to rack up a $1.5 million. If you're not able to work for years, if you're having,
yeah, I literally had a artificial disc replacement in my neck, 2 discs at the same time.
Remember that?
A massive surgery and everything else. It only cost like a couple $100,000. Now, don't get me wrong; that's expensive,
which
and insurance helped me. I'm not in any way telling you that's fine. I'm just telling you that's a tenth, though, of what she's asking for. That's what I'm kind of getting
stuff like this. That's too much. Again, if you just fall, discount on the meal or free dessert. if you're injured, be recompensed up to the amount that you're out, and maybe a little bit for the trouble. I get that.
And at the end of the day, though, I will say this, though. If we're not very careful in society, ladies and gentlemen, suing people because coffee is too hot, suing people because you slipped on a potato, all I'm telling you is if we're not very careful, we're going to get to where nobody wants to be in business anymore because it's just too dangerous. It's like, when am I going to get sued and go down in Lawfare Nation and nobody can make a living, nobody can count on anything, nobody's reliable, nobody's responsible, everybody's out for something. I mean, it's a disaster in America and sets a horrible precedent. By the way, it makes you want to sing, say my name, say my name. My name is Dan Sullivan, baby.
The future of America will not be decided in Washington alone. It will be shaped by informed citizens willing to stand up, get involved, and take action. Join the 2026 John Birch Society Conference, Friday, June 5th and Saturday, June 6th, at the beautiful Radisson Hotel downtown in Salt Lake City. Hear powerful presentations on protecting election integrity, restoring sound money, exposing the push for global control, and stopping a constitutional convention. Featuring keynote speakers including Phil Lyman, Catherine Austin Fitts, Alex Newman, and special remarks from JBS CEO Wayne Morrow. Enjoy a full weekend of education, strategy, networking, and inspiration with members and friends from across the country. Mark your calendar, reserve your tickets, be informed, be equipped, be part of the solution. Visit JBS Conference Salt Lake City 2026 at jbs.org/conference today.
Back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. I think that Outback Steakhouse needs some of the weaponization compensation fund, ladies and gentlemen. The problem is that weapon compensation fund is now defunded, debunked. I don't know. The lawfare shut it right on down, buddy. So Donald Trump was, his IRS records were leaked. They went ahead and took advantage of the old Donald. He got mad. Now he comes back and he sues. He's suing for $10 million. Doesn't get that, but comes back and says, hey, I'll have the IRS never bother me and my family again. And secondly, we'll get this compensation fund rolling, $1.8 billion. And then both sides of the House, Republicans and Democrats, the courts, everybody riots and basically shuts Donald squarely down. Now the Trump team's saying they're not doing it. They've backed away for good, James. But I think that Outback Steakhouse needs a piece of that weaponization fund, brother. I'm just kidding. I don't think they do. I do think there are victims of the government who do, though, James.
Well, it's definitely a growth market to sue and try and get your nest egg out of it.
Unless you're James Edwards. Then even if you've been attacked in the weaponization, then you still can't do any good when you sue. It's only if you want slip on mashed potatoes.
You know what's funny about that, Sam? Going back to my libel suit that you're referencing, is that when we filed that suit, which was just a textbook, the quintessential definition of what constitutes libel. We didn't ask for any sort of crazy amount. It was basically just enough to cover what would have been my attorney's fees, and for my attorney.
That's your mistake, buddy.
I think it was in the tens of thousands of dollars. It wasn't anything. It wasn't.
Yeah, you should have put a B on yours like Donald. I mean, come on.
I think it might have been
James.
like 20 grand. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, he paid $10 billion. Well, that's another thing that does happen, though. I mean, you ask for 1.5 million, and if you get 100 grand, I mean, you're happy because you shouldn't have gotten anything.
That's right.
And of course, Outback and these big corporations have insurance for things like this. But at the same time, I mean, it's still preposterous, and it jams up the courts. I mean, you're talking about years for things.
Oh,
what is
the
old saying about the law? The wheels of justice
grind so fine and so slow.
I mean, it's
no doubt about it.
You're talking about years, half a decade plus to get anything through the courts, even simple things where it's just slam dunks. So
you've even got the Guantanamo Bay people for 9/11 still having battles in the courts and stuff like that, and it's literally like 25 years later. So your point's well taken. But listen, here's the deal with this story that I found interesting, James, and I want you to give me your take on this. It says Congress, the courts, and GOP revolt. They sink Trump's $1.8 billion weaponization fund. Trump's proposed anti-weaponization fund appears to be effectively dead. After a combination of Republicans, the courts, everybody, acting Attorney General Todd Blanche told him the fund is not moving forward. It's done. They've abandoned it, says Todd Blanche. The fund was originally created by the settlement of Trump's suit, as I mentioned, but critics argue the fund lacks sufficient oversight, and then they say it could potentially allow claims from victims of January the 6th, and it would be an unprecedented, unfair use of taxpayer money. Even several Republicans bashed it, stood against it. The key development this week is Donald backed away. Republican lawmakers also balked at the proposal, derailing the legislation, forcing Donald to retreat. Multiple news organizations now report that it's been abandoned. Now, the reason I spend so much time on the details of that is because, look, everybody's against Trump on this one. Everyone. And the sad part is when Trump's in a lame duck position and everyone's against Trump on this, that's a bad precedent going into the midterms, James. A horrible precedent.
Well, like most things that sound, I don't even know if I could say this one sounded too good to be true. I mean, it was interesting because the IRS was at the other end, the receiving end of this. But so, what do I care? And it certainly was probably done to enrich, Trump and his cronies, and maybe some of it, in the best case scenario, would have trickled down to some J6ers. But this one was almost a little bit too outlandish to believe it would take traction. It was only, I think, our very last episode together, Sam, a couple of weeks ago, that we were just talking about the fact that he had been pushing for this, and that the AG Blanche had gone to bat on this issue in a very real and public way, and then now within 2 weeks, it's basically disintegrated. But yeah, a lot has changed in the last year. There was a big article. There was an article posted online from one of the speakers. You spoke there, Steve King, members of the Parliament in Europe and senators in Europe and others at our conference last year, the TPC conference, the Will to Power.
Can you believe that was a year ago already? Over a year ago? It's insane.
It was eye-opening to read this. It was just published on June the 1st. It was eye-opening to see what everybody's thoughts were with regards to everything Trump had done in the first, because we met in May, and he had just, reassumed office in January. And so that first 4 months, that initial blitz was just so encouraging. There was just such an uplift. The wind was truly in the sails. It looked like everything was going our way. And then now, a year later, you're talking about getting wiped out in the midterms. And this article breaks down what we were looking at then and what's happened since then. This last year has not been good for Trump. This example that you just bring up.
Trump has literally been taking a beating for a year. The deep state mocked him the first term. He underestimated them. Now he fights them and saves his very life about the IRS and about going to jail and everything else, dodged a big bullet. Now he jumps back into office, and the deep state is absolutely, it's like a cage fight. They've got Donald Trump in the corner just beating on him. And you can say, Sam, you're crazy. He's winning a lot of things. And my response is, I don't see it that way, James. I really don't. And I'll give you the example. They're calling it America's political tug of war now. Republicans hold power, but Democrats show momentum as the 26 midterms take shape. The midterms outcome will likely determine not only control of Congress in 2027, but will also set the stage for the presidential race for 2028. Now, I don't know who the Democrats are going to pick. I know the Republicans are kind of, testing some candidates out. They're basically saying, hey, let's have J.D. Vance sound and look and feel and act presidential. But yet Marco Rubio's the guy that's most likely the potential or, providential pick kind of a thing from the Republicans. I don't know where that'll go, but they're battling between those kind of candidates. Possibly Donald Trump Jr. comes in as a whatever candidate or something strange happens. Who knows? But if the elections were held today, most analysts would say the House is genuinely up for grabs. Key battlegrounds include, and this is interesting, there's a lot of states in the mix right now: Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, Michigan, New Hampshire, Iowa, Alaska, and then there's governors' battles. And this is where the long-term battles really occur. Democrats are targeting several Republicans, while Republicans are, attacking as well. And they've kind of had a bunch of split races. The Republicans win this, the Democrats win that, and numerous state legislative races are also becoming national targets because of this very issue. Neither party really has major retirements or collapses or anything else. It's all up for grabs. Nobody knows what's going on. So this from Donald Trump being the rock star. Now, he still has lockstep control of the Republican Party, which some are saying is good, but I say it's bad. A lame duck with lockstep control of the party, that doesn't look good for the party. And then traditionally, midterms, usually the other party takes power. James, with that summation, what do you say?
Well, I would say this. Most everybody votes on the present conditions at that exact moment, within the days or even weeks prior to an election. And that's it. If a ghost of some ghost of Christmas past came to me in 2012 and told me where we would be in 2026 in terms of social, cultural, demographic, and political terms, I wouldn't believe him. I would say it was too optimistic, too bullish to be realistic to think that 15 years or 14 years beyond 2012, we would be here. I think we are much better positioned as a movement for our issues, the issues that we talk about here on this radio program and this radio network, with regards to immigration, with regards to a lot of the anti-American rhetoric. We could go through the whole litany of it. I do think ultimately we're better off now than we were 10 years ago or 15 years ago for a variety of reasons. However, in this very moment, and again, this goes back to this article I was citing a moment ago, from last year to today, it's very bad for the Republican Party. It's very bad primarily, and this is a recurring topic that you and I have with regards to affordability. I mean, that is going to be the biggest thing that hurts any party in power. It's not the issues that you and I obsess over. It's just basically what's the cost of things, what's the economy doing. It's the economy, stupid. Carville was right about that when it comes to politics. But as we sit here today in early June, things could be radically different come September, October. And
you want to know who I blame the most for all this, James? I don't blame Trump like most people would, or like they think I am. I really blame Congress for this. Trump has done a lot of tremendous things, but just like this compensation fund, I believe there's a lot of people that need fair compensation from federal weaponization. The J6ers among them, many others, including you as another example, including me. They put me on the congressional record, and you, saying we're the nexus of anti-government and hate in America. What a besmirchment of our characters without any evidence of any kind whatsoever. Okay, so we all deserve this weaponization compensation, and I think that's legitimate. The government talks even in the Constitution about just compensation for things such as this, whether it be property or, all kinds of reasons. I think this is legitimate, and Donald Trump tried to do this in Congress. His own people shut him down. If the Republicans, the majority in the House and Senate, would have backed Trump, it would have been a non-issue and it would have continued. But no, his own party, his own Congress literally shuts him down. Same thing with the IRS. He's talked about abolishing the IRS. What if they really put a solid bill together? What if they really I can keep going. Tariffs. What about those? Donald Trump put them in place. You can say he's all over the map, which he is, sadly. But Congress could have stabilized that and got it done immediately. Congress could have backed Trump and gone to war and done it appropriately if necessary. There's so many things that could have happened, and I'm blaming Congress. Anyway, we'll stop right there. Thanks for being alongside for the ride. I'm Sam Bushman. I've got James Edwards with me. He's well known as the talk show host of the Political Cesspool radio broadcast every Saturday night live, ladies and gentlemen. Check it out, thepoliticalcesspool.org. We're trying to get him on TV, ladies and gentlemen, but oh boy, it's like I got to get him to the dentist. It's like pulling teeth. All right, we'll take care of business. Thanks for being alongside for the ride. I'm Sam Bushman. We're everywhere. YouTube, radio, Rumble, X, Truth Social. I mean, there's so many places to go now. I'm telling you, just find us everywhere, will you? God save the Republic of the United States of America.
It's worth it when you try.